Welcome to another episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast. I'm your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, leave your comments. And today, and before we start the introduction, as always, for all of your real estate needs in South Florida, make sure to check out Rafi the Realtor on Instagram for the weekly newsletter. You can find my link in bio. And without further ado, there's a little helicopter above. Okay. Without further ado, we have Harris Sultan, or Harris Sultan, as they probably said back in home country. And Harris is quite an interesting fellow. He lives in Australia. He comes from a Pakistani background. He is ex-Muslim. Now he's an atheist. We'll talk about how long you've been an atheist and kind of why you switched over. And I came across Harris's content discussing the war in Israel. You know, I'm a former Israeli soldier, still very, very proud of that fact. I am a Zionist. I am very pro-Israel. I'm a proud Jew. Those are just things I wanna make clear. And I came across Harris's content, and I was very, very interested in it. I really was impressed by what he had to say, and I thought it would only make sense to get on a podcast and have a conversation, pick his brain a little bit. So, Harris, thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, Rafi.
Oh, it's my pleasure, brother. So, he also has a book, and the book is called. Remind me of the name. I'm so
The
sorry.
Curse of God. The Curse of God, Why I Left Islam. You can get it. Hardcover or soft cover, you can get it from anywhere you want.
Okay, so check it out for whether you're atheist or not, whether you believe in Islam or not, whether you believe in Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, whatever your beliefs are. If it's something you want to check out, definitely give it a go, and make sure to check out his YouTube channel, Harris Sultan. It is really, really very thought provoking, and I implore you guys to give it a watch, especially on the current war. So, just a couple of things, really interesting topics. I know that you will go in order of the topics here. Uh, you grew up, like I mentioned, from a former Pakistani family. From a
Mm.
Pakistani family, your family moved to Australia. You grew up a practicing Muslim. What was that like, just briefly, and how did you decide, I'm not interested in this God stuff, the religion, none of it makes sense? How did that kind of happen?
Well, I grew up in Pakistan is a very conservative country, but it's not as, or at least when I was growing up, it wasn't as hardcore as Afghanistan or some other countries. But still, it was a very conservative Islamic country. It was founded on the premise that Muslims of subcontinent India need to have their own country. So Islam was everywhere in Pakistan, but it became an integral part of everyone's life when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 79, and then a lot of American aid came in, and that's what obsessed me a little bit, that United States wasn't really that far-sighted when they were going into it. So they basically imported jihad. They told the local population that they need jihad to fight against the Soviets, and it served them well. And that's how Mujahideen came into existence. And then when the Americans left, uh, the same Mujahideen became Taliban. All of this was happening through Pakistan. So as a result, in Pakistan, our population got radicalized. Saudi Wahhabi brand of Islam was making its way into Pakistan in the 80s. And now I was born in 83, so I was growing up in the 90s. And that's when I saw, because my parents tell me how before, in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, even though we had these problems with India, but it wasn't that a radicalized society as it turned out to be, as what you see today. So when I was growing up, I was shielded from the radical elements of Islam because, as I said, my parents grew up in a much more malign, a much more mellow version of um, Islam. So I was shielded from that, but I still was curious. As I said, it was still a very conservative society with its own set of values. Some of them were taken um, uh, from the Hindu culture because we were part of India, and obviously because we were a former British colony. So Pakistan was an anglicized Islamic democracy, if that even makes sense. So most of our laws are still based on uh, uh, Anglo-Saxon laws. So, but I was always curious, I think, which surprises me, that why people don't really question their beliefs or whatever that is, whatever is just imposed on them. So I always was curious, and there was a tiny phase, and then obviously in the 90s, late 90s, when I was becoming when I was a teenage boy, obviously at that time there's a bit of a more there's a bit of more motivation um, to explore your religious teachings, because you see all these girls around you, and you want to experience life. But obviously Islam is a very conservative kind of a religion, or at least the modern Islam that we have. So I always ask questions. Some questions never made sense. I was always more rational. I always wanted evidence for whatever I wanted to believe in. And then in 2003, obviously 2001 happened, September 11 attacks happened. Being a Pakistani, obviously Pakistan became a frontline state against this war on terror. And I remember I was really scared. I thought that the United States is going to attack Pakistan as well, because if they're going to go after Afghanistan, at that time there was this debate raging: should we sell out our Afghan brothers, or and join the American alliance, or we should stand up against them and stand and defend Afghanistan. So we had a military dictator, General Pervez Musharraf, at that time, and he just said, "Yeah, whatever you want." So that was a sigh of relief. But while this debate was raging, I was really scared, I remember. But anyway, so I was still a Muslim at that time. My I would say that I still was very anti-America at that time, even though September 11 had happened. You lean on these beliefs of convenience, that it's an inside job, etc. You wouldn't believe in it, and then we obviously grew up hating on Israel, that it's a tyranny, and it's just oppressing our fellow Muslims in Palestine, etc. So, and then I moved to Australia 2003. I graduated from here in IT, and that's when I stumbled into Richard Dawkins' books and interviews. That YouTube was getting big at that time, 2005 and 6. So I think from 2005 to 2007, I became aware of Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens, and I thought everything they were saying, it made sense. So yeah, so I think I would say probably by 2007 and 8, I was an atheist by that point, but I didn't come out as an atheist. Again, even though I was living independently in Australia on my own, I didn't have any immediate family members around me. My parents at that time were still living in Pakistan at that time. So I thought, okay, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. So yeah, so I stayed an atheist from 2007 till 2017. I went to Pakistan a few times, cool, just like any expat who would go there, have fun, party or whatever. And then something happened in 2017. The government of Pakistan started cracking down on these atheist bloggers who were saying exactly what I believed in. And some of them were arrested, tortured, demonized. They were on national TV. They were dehumanized. They were demonized on national TV. This debate started raging. Like the typical stuff that, oh, this is Israeli Zionist propaganda or American propaganda. They're deliberately trying to mislead our youth, etc. So, and one such guy, his name was Mishal Khan. You might have heard of it. It made global headlines at that time. He was killed in his university campus. His name was Mishal Khan.
I'll have to look it up. It doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah. So basically he just asked some questions, like one of the we don't know exactly how true that is, but he asked some questions. Most people say that he got into an argument with one of his friends, and he said, why did God create one pair of humans like Adam and Eve? Why did he not create two pairs of humans so they could not commit incest? And apparently that was viewed as highly blasphemous. A mob of 15, 20 fellow university students barged into his hostel room, dragged him out, brutally beat him, threw his body from the second floor window, jumped up and down on him. Brutal, absolutely brutal. That made me so angry that I said, well, this guy just looked like me. Well, probably he was slightly younger than me, but he believed in exactly what I believe in. How come I'm enjoying my life, but these people are dying? So that's when I decided to come out. I initially didn't show my face, like my first.
It's
Um,
crazy. Just real quick, you coming out as an atheist in a Muslim country is like a gay guy coming out in I guess a religious.
yeah,
It's a similar idea. It's so truthfully, even with Jews, right? Coming out as an atheist, even in the community I grew up in, would still be a big deal.
but you wouldn't
But
be killed though.
nobody's beating you up for it.
Mm.
And there are very religious communities in Israel where they have a big problem with it. And I would say maybe there are instances where they might throw things at you. It could be possible, but they're not going to lynch you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that.
the vast majority of Israelis would be like, I don't give a shit. Go ahead. There's plenty of atheists there, and they'd be like, okay, like go ahead.
There's so many atheists among Jewish population that we don't use the word Jew as a religious identity. We just use it as an ethnic identity
Correct.
because there's so many atheist Jews. But unfortunately, Muslims haven't had that period of enlightenment. We are hoping, and now we're going through that phase. That's the whole purpose of our activism, is to normalize dissent, normalize apostasy, and we're trying to get through to these people that your kids could be um, atheists. It's kind of like, yes, it's a nice comparison. Like being a homosexual was a huge taboo. Like I remember when I was going to university, um, back in those days, or we used to throw these insults at each other. Oh, that's so gay, you're gay. It was frowned upon. But now you can't even imagine anything like that because it's been normalized. And that was the whole point of coming out of the closet. Like you come out, you embrace your identity, and you tell the world who you are. A lot of people ask, a lot of conservatives ask, well, if you're gay, why are you telling me? Well, they don't understand the purpose of that. When you normalize it, when you come out, you normalize it, you remove the taboo. And that's exactly what we're doing as apostates of Islam, because there are 13 or 12 countries, I believe, where apostasy is punishable by death. In Pakistan, apostasy is not punishable by death, but you could be lynched by a mob because blasphemy is punishable by death. And anything you say that is considered inappropriate, you could be killed. For example, there's Mashal Khan. He actually did not insult Prophet Muhammad. He just asked a perfectly normal theological question, and he paid for it with his life.
It's hard. It's really horrible. For me, I choose to have faith, and maybe time will tell. I practice Judaism very moderately. You can call me traditional. I choose to believe in God, whatever form God is. I question that all the time. Is it a he, she, it? Is it a thing that exists? Is he a man with white hair with a pot belly living in the clouds? I accept that I don't
Watching
really
our
have
every
the
move.
answer. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and I open myself up. What I just think is wild is this extremist view that so many people have. And this is why I want to touch into, I want to go into this whole Israel-Palestine thing with you and
Mm.
really kind of pick your brain about it. And I'm very opinionated on this, so I'm not going to just be standing back, putting you on the spotlight. I have a lot of my own thoughts.
Sure.
But why do you think some people support Israel and why do some people support Palestine? And before I get your answer, it seems to be a color war in a way where a lot of Jews just blindly follow Israel, and a lot of Muslims blindly follow being pro-Palestinian. It's like I'm Muslim, so by default, I need to be pro-Palestinian. And then a lot of Jews do the same thing. What I do think is different though, is I think the Jewish population overall, as a whole, are a lot more educated, and I can't say all of them, but we have a lot more freedom as Jews, whether we live in Israel, America, where we are just tend to be much more accepting people. And so therefore I think we know more about what's going on in the world and we're allowed to think and question things a lot more. And so that's why, I think to a large degree we have much more of a logical basis in our arguments. This is my go ahead and give me.
Absolutely, I agree. And I don't think, I think that's a gross oversimplification when you said that Jews just blindly follow Israel. Muslims blindly follow Islam. Muslims do. Jews don't, because Israel, even though it's founded on theological claims of promised land, Israel is still a Western-style democracy. As a result, you have a vibrant left, you have a vibrant right,
Yeah.
and you have this free Jewish population all around the world. And we have seen a lot of those Jews speaking against the current conflict,
And they don't get
speaking
and they
against.
don't get killed for it. And that's the difference.
Exactly,
That's the difference.
exactly.
The thing that I wish I could talk to Mohammed Hijab about this. Muslims slaughter each other for different beliefs. You can have the
Mm,
most liberal Jew and the most conservative Israeli. They might hate each other. They might even get into
mm,
fistfights. But
mm,
you will never that I'm aware of, with all the civil unrest that was happening in Israel, there were protests. There were
mm.
people definitely getting arrested aggressively. There was definitely, challenges. You were not seeing Israeli left wing and right wing Israelis picking up M16s and shooting each other and killing them.
Yeah,
Because at the end of the
absolutely.
day,
But
deep
mm,
down, even if they just resent each other, they're still like, even though that dude really pisses me off, he's still my brother. And you saw that when the war broke out, left, right, center, religious, atheist. I'm Jewish. I don't care what color you're from. I don't care if your parents came from Yemen, you came from Algeria, you're from Germany, you're from Ethiopia. We're all Jews. We're all family. It doesn't matter.
yeah, and that is testament to the fact that Israel is a liberal democracy. You can't do that. I mean, even this Muslim diaspora that is living in these Western liberal democracies, you have seen them, how they gel together, how they can gather huge numbers and get united under a single cause, which is tribalism 101, basically. Yeah, you're Muslim, that's it. And
Yeah.
but it's multi-layered problem. So why do Muslims not unite for other Muslims on other issues like
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, go ahead. Go
mm.
ahead. I'm all ears.
Yeah, so like for example, MBS has killed what 200,000 in Yemen. Bashar al-Assad has killed 300,000 or 250,000 in Syria. In Xinjiang, people are dying there at the hands of Chinese who are not even Muslim. So in the first two, you could say, well, okay, it's an internal Muslim conflict, so we can't decide whose side we need to be on. Even though that's a very lousy excuse, because how many kids have died? And then when and in Xinjiang, okay, well, those are atheist communist Chinese, because you know why they don't go after them? Because China doesn't China doesn't operate like a democracy, of course, because and even with the countries it's dealing with, for example, China have their tentacles deep inside Pakistan. On Pakistan TV, in Pakistan, even in private gatherings, people don't talk against Israel. Against Pakistan. Sorry, against China. They don't bring up Xinjiang. They don't bring up Uyghur Muslims. Why? Why don't they bring them up? Because China's watching, and people get arrested. So that tells me that it's got less to do with Muslim lives. It's got more to do with Jewish hatred. Now, I'll qualify that statement, but why Jewish hatred? It's because we have this little sample. It's a tiny piece of land. It's very, very tiny. Well, why are Muslims so interested in one group of people fighting another group of people over a very tiny piece of land? We've seen bigger conflicts and seen Muslims showing no interest in that. It's because it's the Jews. It's the eschatology. Jews are eternal enemies of Muslims. Islam is the most anti-Semitic religion on earth. Yes, in the New Testament, Christianity, yeah, they blame the Jews for killing Jesus, etc. But I'm not an expert in Christianity, but we don't see that kind of anti-Semitism. Yeah, we
Well,
see
that's
that
because
in
it's
the far right.
reformed. That's because it's
It's
reformed. Christianity and Judaism have turned away. That's the funny thing. All these three religions have elements of violence and peace. It just
mm,
depends on what you want to hang on to more. The peaceful Muslims they choose to follow more of the peaceful elements. But you
yeah,
could argue the more devout you are as a religious Jew, Muslim, or Christian, the more you're going to latch on to the violent elements. The
yeah,
difference is that Judaism, this is just my understanding, Judaism and Christianity have over recent years reformed and said, you know what? We're going to let those violent elements kind of play a backseat, and we're going to try to embrace the more peaceful, loving sides of it. And then, the more devout Muslims, unfortunately, I don't feel that they've reformed. They've just kind of held on to a lot of those components.
But here's the problem.
Yeah.
The moderates of Muslims are different from the moderates of Christianity or Judaism. You've seen them. These moderate Muslims are also out in full force. And as I said, at the base of it, it's not about Muslim lives, because 500,000 Muslims get killed in the same decade at the hands of other Muslims. And then 15,000, I think the latest number is, again, that's 15,000 too many. But just purely if we're talking about numbers, millions of people have come out. Why against Israel only? Why? It's not just about Muslim lives, because if it was, you would have come out for Saudis and Bashar as well. So it is deeply rooted in their hatred for Jews. And when I see these moderate Muslims, they're also totally incapable of seeing the other side of the argument. They just don't understand. And what's depressing is that because Jews have always been far less in number, that's why Muslims have more voice on social media, and now
Easier to
we're
fight
seeing
against. It's an easier battle. You know, it's also interesting. I believe that people think that Jews are also more amiable because we haven't been ruling land for most of history. We've been the ones getting kicked around. So now when we have this little country, and especially because so many people have fought over it and want it, they go, you know what? We can't let these Jews continue to possibly take more land or kill more people. We don't like what they're doing because we believe it's Muslim land to begin with. We don't want them to be there in the first place. If we complain enough or we cry enough, maybe they'll stop the war. But we know that Assad, no matter how much we complain, Assad's not stopping. No matter how much we complain, MBS or the Chinese, they're going to do what they want to do no matter what happens. But if we stand in the streets and we show enough support, the Israelis the liberal Israelis, other Israelis, they might say, you know what? The world just hates us. Maybe if we listen to them, they'll stop hating us. This is the mistake we make as Jews all the time. You know, we think that if we just kind of appease, it'll somehow help.
But then you see it's actually working. We've got
It does
these,
work. It
these
does, yes.
far left woke mobs.
Yep.
They're running amok. You've got some of these politicians in Britain and elsewhere. They are buying into this propaganda. They're just looking at it from oppressor paradigm. And Israel is the oppressor, it's a colonial power, it's an imperial power, and Palestinians are just victims. Now, I'm not downgrading the plight of Palestinian people. I do understand that they are living in not occupied, blockaded territories. And I'm staunchly against these Jewish settlements in the West Bank. And I understand the other side of the argument too. I mean, I understand the significance of the West Bank and certain cities and certain locations, how important they are for the Jewish population.
You are a really well studied guy. I got to give you a lot of credit. You are really well studied.
I'm not that well studied.
You're not missing a beat, man. I'm really impressed. Yeah, go on.
I'm not an expert, but I look at it as a political dispute, and I look at it, if you want to move forward, and I'm a big fan of Yuval Noah Harari. I think he said that if you want total peace, then you're going to have blood. Then if you want total peace, then you're not going to have any justice or full justice. But if you want full justice, there will be no peace. So both sides will have to make concessions. Both sides will have to give up something. Israel has, in my opinion, has a moral high ground, or purely because they can say that, look at this. If we let them go, if we free these Palestinian states, it's going to be a hostile nation, and a nation that does not believe in our existence. Now, that is non-negotiable. Israel has a right to exist. Israel has been there for 75 years, a very prosperous country, a Western-style democracy. I like the quote. I don't know who said it. It said the only Muslims in the Middle East who can choose their leader live in Israel. That says a lot. There are no
I've
other
never actually heard that, and
democracies.
it's brilliant.
There are no other. There's no other democracy in the Middle East. So, for Palestine to form, I mean, if we can get to that level, and I can understand the Biden administration has spoken about it. I think David Cameron just made a statement that we're going to need a workable solution after this conflict is over. Once I hope Hamas is totally destroyed, even though if it's not totally destroyed, but it's weakened to a point that it won't be able to inflict the kind of injury that it did on the 7th of October. There has to be a solution. And both sides will have to make concessions. But as long as Palestinians are hell-bent on wiping Israel off the map, 60% of the Palestinian population in Gaza and in the West Bank, both independent surveys, Pew surveys, they want to wipe Israel off the map. They don't want a two-state solution. That's non-negotiable. No country, even if that country is in the wrong, would not say that, okay, you keep doing these little terrorist attacks, we're going to just pack up and leave. We're going to disperse all around the world. No country's ever going to do that. And another hypocrisy that I want to point out, I keep making this point. Pakistan was founded on religious grounds, yeah? India was divided on the basis that Muslims of India said that once the British leave, we don't want to live under majority Hindu rule. We don't want to live under them because they're gonna, they're not gonna let us live like free people. They're not gonna even though the Indian side assured them that this is going to be a secular democracy. Now, that's not what Palestinians do say that, but Indians said it, and India is a vibrant secular democracy. Muslims have equal rights. There's no problem there, despite some Muslims say that all Muslims are oppressed, that they're not. So Muslims were okay to divide a country in the name of religion. But at the same time, Jews said the same thing, that for nearly 2,000 years, we've lived under different people. We've never been able to establish our own state for nearly 2,000 years. So when the British leave, we need our own state, okay? And initially in the Peel Plan, I think it was 20% of the land was given to Israel and Muslim, and they rejected it. And then there were so many wars after that, they kept rejecting it, and Israel kept getting more and more territory. But Muslims are okay with Pakistan, are okay with India to be divided in the name of religion, but they're not okay with this. And I can't blame the Jews for not wanting one big secular Palestine or Israel or Judea, whatever you want to call it. You can't blame Israel because Muslims don't have a good track record of creating secular democracies. Look around you. How many secular countries there are? Maybe Turkey. And we know the history of how Turkey became a secular democracy. And even that's under threat under Erdogan. So two-state solution, in my opinion, is the only solution, even though in that case also, I think Israel will be on the losing side because the Palestine that we're going to get after this two-state solution is going to be a hostile nation towards Israel. However, there should be some, I think it's attainable. I think there should be, before Palestine is freed, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, in the 10, 20 years at least. But that could be achieved, and Israel would need to make some concessions. But that can only happen if you can get guarantees from other Muslim countries that they would respect the borders, the agreed upon borders, whether that's 1967 borders or some other borders, whatever that is, they're going to respect it, and they're going to make no further claims to Israel territory. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, because Palestinians are an aggrieved party. I understand they're angry and they can probably think differently, but I blame the Muslim diaspora, Muslims living all around the world. They are hypocrites. They are telling the Palestinians, keep dying, keep doing these little terrorist activities, and in return, keep dying, but don't come to us. Stay there, protect the Holy Land, and keep sacrificing your children. We'll give you moral support, but that's it. Instead, these outside Muslims, they should be trying to find a solution. But what they do, they say, no, we'll join you from the river to the sea. They're adding fuel to the fire, basically. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So this behavior of Muslims outside of Palestine, it's very disingenuous. And instead of trying to find a solution, they are adding fuel to the fire. Sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So just check. I just sent you a Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Hold on one second. So, okay, would you be open to doing another, like, I guess, like a round 1 and 2? I know it's not ideal. I know it's not.
No, no, that's fine. I can do it as long as it's, like I have time. This has gone for nearly half an hour, so I think that's good. We've covered most of it.
We've covered a nice amount. We can always, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground with this too. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
just ended with that. Okay, that was part one, and we'll do it part two
sure.
in the next. Yeah.
When it comes, there's a lot to discuss. First of all, when it comes to this whole thing, right? Remove the religious argument. This is what I've been telling. I've done a bunch of debates. No one has been able to refute this. All land has been conquered. Islam has you know crossed.
They went to Spain.
They
Yeah,
have
they went
crossed
to Spain.
multiple lands, killed people, pillaged, done who knows what, and converted forcefully. Christians have done the same. Jews, on the other hand, had never had an interest in proselytizing. So there were a few occasions, if I understand that it happened, more or less throughout history. Jews have had the opposite interest. You're Jewish or you aren't. You want to come join the club? We're going to make it hard for you to do so. We kind of push away converts. So we're not interested in conquest. A lot of Muslims try to purport this idea that we want more and more land. All we want is what we consider to be biblical Israel, and that's that. The reality, though, whether it's fair or not, because there's the term "all is fair in love and war," when you had the Peel Commission and the partition plan and several other opportunities for us to share it, and you said no. You can even argue, understandably, they didn't want the Jews there; they wanted Muslim rule, but you invade what was what could have been a shared land, two-state solution. You surrounded the Jews with the goal of exterminating everyone, and you failed against all odds on multiple occasions.
Mhm.
And if you would have won, we either would have been mostly killed or we would have been kicked out, right? But then you lost, and now you want to complain that it's not fair.
Mm.
I mean, it wasn't really fair when 5 armies invaded the Jewish, the land that had Jews on it, because it wasn't even a country at the time.
Mm.
And then you did it again and again and again. But this is how land has always been,
Yeah.
ruled. That's how I
The
kind
only
of
problem, the only problem with that argument is that after
sure.
the Second World War, the world had decided that no more conquered land can be accepted
Okay.
or annexed. So I think Israel probably missed it by 5 years or something.
That could be a valid point.
But I think that's a frivolous point now, because there is a concept called historical conservatism, which basically means that whatever's done is done. You cannot right the wrongs of history. For example, as an atheist, I don't care about biblical claims. I don't even believe in
That's why I don't
God.
make
So
that
how could
argument. That's why I
yeah,
never make that
exactly.
argument.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. But you could make an argument too, because I don't say that you should wipe off Pakistan, even because it was founded in the name of religion. I respect local people's right to govern themselves the way they want to, even though I disagree. Being a Pakistani, I disagree with it. I would want a secular Pakistan, or even merge with India again to become bigger and strong. But that's just my opinion, okay? But until we can establish that opinion across the entire population, forget about it. I respect the right. So but the bigger point here is, what's done is done. The reason why we don't give the Australian land back to the Aboriginals, or America's and Canada's back to the natives, no matter how much they even want it, not that they want it
They're not even
to
asking
an
for it at this
extent.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not even asking for it. But let's just say if they ask for it, would you pack up, send all the Europeans back to Europe? No, because we can't do that. So
But
now
here's the
same thing
thing.
with Israel.
But here's the thing. First of all, great point. Even though you can use that example, the people who conquered Australia from the Aborigines, or the people that conquered from Native Americans, never had any kind of historical claim, right? Because whether you're religious or not, whether you believe in religion or not, they're the descendants of Jews, at least a percentage of us, right? There are some Jews who converted, yada yada. Jews,
Yeah, a lot of
intermarried.
European Jews too. Yeah.
There are absolutely Jews who have a connection to that land, as far as DNA goes. So they were in that land at some point. That's not the point. Isn't to valid that doesn't validate the argument, but it is a little different than random people who've never set foot there. But yes, I agree. What's done is done.
What's done is done. Israel is there.
Right.
Basically bringing 7 million Israelis, or 7 million Jews of Israel under this other country, that would be, or expelling them from there. that would be a genocide. That would be genocide. We can't accept it. As I said, that point is non-negotiable. That can never happen. Muslims have to come to terms with Muslims have to accept the reality that Israel is here. We need to move forward, whether that's Gaza and the West Bank, and you should be fighting for that. But when you say that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you're actually playing in the hands of, let's say, the far right of Israel, who say, well, see, look at this, they want to wipe us off, so we can't free them. And that's a pretty valid argument on their part. India feared that Pakistan would be a hostile nation, but they accepted it. They made that mistake. They freed Pakistan. But Pakistan and India,
Harris, let me just quickly hold the point. Let me just close this one because I got showing a minute left. If we could just hop on another real quick. Yeah,
does it not let it keep going? Okay, anyway, yeah,
no,
finish it,
guys. It's stopping it short. We're gonna hop on for a second. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I hope you guys have made it this far and are enjoying, and just make sure to check out the next round, as I'm gonna call it.